afternoon, good evening, Jar of Marble dwellers and Jar of Marble curious. My name is Linda and this is Jar of Marbles. So glad that you were able to pop by. I was just thinking about the subject of failure this week, and the more I thought about it, I realised that common sense really knocks on the door of that quite a bit. And so I sort of had a little wee think about it, did a bit of research, wondering, contemplating, and this is what I've come up with. And I hope that you enjoy it. And please let me know if you do, because otherwise it's a very lonely world. Good. Thank you. Now, I was looking at a clip from the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, where the old scientist would sing, "From the ashes of disaster grow the roses of success." Indeed, it is not failure, but more continued research, testing, practicing, which takes patience, something which is becoming less of an attribute in our fast-paced now world that we live in. Stands out glaringly to me because I've seen very different eras with little in common. With today, with all that we as a race achieve, there appears to be an ever bigger price depending on how striving, working hard, studying hard, foregoing your happiness, bringing enormous debt into your life works for you, be it what is expected of you, what you believe you must do. It's a big plate of scrambled something. There is so much in many kids' lives, too much pressure to be academic. My 5-year-old granddaughter is absolutely thrashed, exhausted with what is expected of her in class and then homework out of class, clearly, tired to her core by Wednesday. And let me tell you, this girl is switched on. Fortunately, her parents are playful. What about play at school for the little ones? Research shows that play and creativity with utilising your imagination encourages a higher level of academic sponginess. It's an industry term.
No, it's not.
Look, Bob, you're a figment of my imagination. Yes, it is. Play helps with absorbing information readily. And what about good old-fashioned common sense? Common sense allows you to problem solve where those who have the better education often can't. It is widely known that people with their degrees often and sadly lack common sense. Hence why the sayings like common sense is not so common. I'm sure you've heard of it. But common sense may not be as common as we think. It varies from person to person because none of us has identical knowledge and experiences. A group must apply a lot of concerted, intentional and integrated effort to develop a shared pool of judgment. Kind of scary when you think of it, isn't it? When you have people in power with no common sense, then you apply it to the nation. The group themselves may be lacking in common sense. They may get away with all sorts of insidious and insane laws. Anyway, don't get me started. Who said common sense is uncommon? François-Marie Arouet, probably better known by his nom de plume Voltaire, was an 18th century French Enlightenment writer, historian and philosopher, famous for his wit and his advocacy of freedom of speech. One of his most popular quotes is, "The beautifully simple, common sense is not so common. So we've been afflicted for an age. Maybe it is a rarity after all. Is everyone born with common sense?" I had a nosy around that and I found that common sense is something that we are both born with and learn over the years of growing up. Genetic intelligence is something that we all have and plays a big part in being born with common sense. However, it will be used a lot when growing up when it comes to natural ability and life challenges.
I have common sense.
Oh, don't tell me you've written a song about it, Bob.
Well, funny you should say.
Common sense leaves you on the fence if you got no common sense. My name's Bob, your time I want to rob. Keep your common sense in your pocket, right? Honestly, Bob, words, I'm just lost. I really don't want... Thank you, Bob. Common sense means that something makes sense to you and your unique set of beliefs, experiences, and what you've learnt throughout your life. All of us will find our way in life, and it may be deemed unconventional, but I have come to the conclusion that if you don't walk the path carved out for you, then you are out of step. Well, that is just not so. There's a set of beliefs fed to us before we could string 5 words together. Great to get an education, of course it is, but it is not the only education. There will be so many experiences that will shape you. School is a blip in comparison to the rest of it. How many people do you know, you may even be one of those people, that did the long, hard yards at university, got the dream job, only to find that it's run by morons and it's back to school again where the bullying and the intimidation is rife. But because you're so determined to get to where you think you need to be deemed successful, you suck it up, you do as you're told, and usually not the job you applied for, end up performing menial tasks, and then your self-confidence, sort of takes a bit of a bomb, and none of us need our sense of value to be eroded or to feel that it's, beginning to erode. By that stage, of course, you may have had the wedding that you can't afford and have a mortgage that is squeezing the life force out of you, so you just feel trapped by your now nightmare job because you have ends to meet, hence why we can feel trapped. But the good news is you can find a way out. So very important not to beat yourself up for what may be coined as procrastinating. For so many that can do a 12-hour day for others, but when it comes to doing stuff for themselves, they feel hopeless. So that can make them see only their so-called failings. Our failures are our teachers, as are our doubts. It shows you where you need to improve or what is required to free yourself from a present dilemma. It is disappointing and hard, but it can eventually be so rewarding. A great quote from Thomas Edison, "I know 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb."
Oh, that's a wonderful way to shine a light on a situation, isn't it?
That's right, Bob. Anyway, I'm in my early 60s and I'm learning about life. I'm not going to say I'm still learning because I don't think you ever get to a place where you've got it all sorted, especially if you have an inquiring mind. I love the idea that no matter what, you're never going to learn it all, and there's always going to be so much to discover and find out. And I'm really satisfied for long, as in I have a voracious appetite for working stuff out that I'm ridiculously curious about. I have failed in many ways along the way, worked out what doesn't work. You have to expect that. It is how we learn and we get to finesse and grow. It's the not stopping at failures. Keep going. They are posts of growth along the way. That's all they are. Failure, the word failure has had bad press over the years. How else are you supposed to learn? I mean, really. If someone has all the answers, say in a class setting, they have either already done the class, maybe repeating it, whatever the case. Why would you take a class about something you already know about? I know there'll be the exceptions, but I'm just, generalising here. Point being, our brains work differently, and it is perfectly okay to admit that, you need help along the way. It allows others to feel good to share what they know, and it is a sign of intelligence to ask questions, right? Honestly, too many people just don't know how wonderful they are. Once I was at this dinner party many moons ago, and there were a few people I didn't really know well, and some not at all. I had asked a question to this individual who was holding court at the table. Maybe there were, say, 20 of us. He smugly turned around and he said, "Oh, don't you know?" Tragic, right? The table went silent. He just made himself look like the fool that he was. And I never did get my answer, but that didn't stop me asking questions in the future, not of him, but to the world in general. He displayed his ignorance and most likely didn't even know the answer. He, however, became very unpopular immediately. And anywho, people like that lose future dinner party invitations. Also, any respect he felt he was due. That really crimps my rimp.
It crimps your what?
It crimps my rimp, Bob. I can see the look of confusion, Bob. Many years ago, well, for as long back as I can remember, I had invented a series of words to describe my feelings. Not that I took objection to the English language, I just preferred my own in spots. When I say something has crimped my rimp, it means it's just annoyed me a bit. My children have had their crimp rimped a few times and can attest to the value of its meaning, knowing that you will get our attention if you say it like that. There are a number of made-up words that my children use to describe the level of their distress of annoyance, for example. There was frampled, crampled, and frimpled and scrimpled. And so cute to hear them use those words ever so earnestly to describe their feelings, say to a grazed knee. So much so that when my eldest daughter was 5 years old, fresh into her first year at primary school, her teacher sent a note to me to come and visit her after school when I was there picking up Laura. She showed me some of Laura's paintings and her attempts to describe her emotion in her art. Once she was crimpled about something, Laura was adamant about the word to her teacher and what it meant, and Laura also spoke about other words that I had made up. One of those lessons as a mum. Fortunately, the teacher was a star and thought the words were brilliant, that Laura could articulate her feelings so clearly as a 5-year-old, but maybe seeing as she was such a smart girl, could I introduce the English equivalent? Talk about getting my ass kicked, but not. It was amusing, and as I said, she was a lovely teacher, but decades on, the words are still used because there are times when your rimp is crimpled. When I was barely 21, I was working for a restaurant bar in the heart of Sydney City. I applied for a job and got it. I noticed a full sandwich bar, just dirty old equipment, cast aside, like all the benches, just, the glass encasements. And I suggested that maybe if we could set it up at the front, that maybe it would work. So we got it all cleaned up, we got it all shiny pretty, and we set it up practically on the pavement, right up to the huge front entrance, so that many people passing by could see that we were in operation. I brought in a friend so I could see there was no way I was going to be able to handle this on my own because it was on a really busy road, very close to Hyde Park in the middle of the city. So we were each given uniforms, which were these hot pink one-piece pantsuits as our uniform, held together with a gold belt. I mean, we did look a little bit snazzy, truly. So I thought it was a little bit over the top for making, salads and ham and cheese croissants and whatever, but there you go. The food bar soon selling bottles full of freshly made fruit salad and yogurts and rolls and salads and salad packs, etc., etc. Yummy, yummy, and it went off. We were crazy busy. We had no competition at all. When we were on the train going home, people thought that we were hairdressers. They were the most impractical outfits for making and preparing food. But over time, it became obvious why that choice had been made. Unbeknownst to me, by night, upstairs, there was a bar that I'd never ventured into, and I'm not sure, looking back, that I even knew there even was an upstairs, or that door that was an upstairs had anything to do with our venue. But anyway, now we're talking 1983, and unbeknownst to me, it was a drag queen bar where they had cabaret shows, and sometimes the entertainers would still be there when I opened the doors at 6 a.m. Their outfits were just amazing, so glamorous. Their makeup and hair was stunning, and I just admired them so much. But soon after, I was managing this entire lower floor, which was a restaurant, a crate bar, and the sandwich bar. I so looked forward to hanging out with the ladies from upstairs. They really were the loveliest people, and their conversations were so colourful. There I'd be in a booth with, say, 6 to 8 of us all together, and I'd be squished in the middle as we chatted on, and they were so kind to allow me into their world. And over time, we just really started to get to know each other really well. And one of the girls, as I recall, was going to be going into hospital to have her jaw softened. I was 21 and a part of this really caring group who was supporting her. She was really scared. Others would lament over their love lives, girl talk. So funny, so gorgeous. Felt right at home, I did. And, we were talking about, making rant, gossip about the manager. It was delicious. So on my break, we would all have coffees together, and they all thought I was a honey and I thought they were all honeys, and I got to know them quite well. And as I said, they would tell stories that were just glorious and quite out of my range of experience, coming from such a small town tucked below the mountains in New Zealand. Now, over time, not only did the sandwich bar explode with busyness, but so did the restaurant, and my tasks became quite numbered. I spoke to the manager owner, who seemed unmoved by what I was telling him, because as I was doing all the handling of the stock and the ordering. I was scheduling the staff's hours. I was even doing the wages. And it came to my attention that I was getting $20 more a week for all my work. So I told him that if he wanted me to manage it, that, pay me something that, made it worth my while, because why would I do all that work for $20 more while everyone else is, just waltzing in and out freely? So he wasn't going to budge, so I resigned, and I felt quite disappointed, and I think at the time I sort of felt like I had really failed myself, and more than anything, because I really loved it there, but when I realised, that I was practically doing so much for free, that I just couldn't carry on happily. So super short story of what unfolded, I started to look for my own little business, and I found one that was thinking about selling. And I know this because another friend was working for them. So she was able to confirm for me what the takings were, their suppliers, rent, lease, terms, and all the things that I needed to know before making an offer. Meanwhile, I went to the bank to get a loan, and I was lucky enough that the bank manager believed in me. But before he okayed my loan, he asked me to come and visit on a regular basis, just to tell him my plans, what I was planning on doing. And then one day he did. He said, well, I think you're going to do really well. And he was okaying the loan. $25,000 later, I bought the business. But meanwhile, back in the jungle, we'll call him Steve, the manager of the previous job I had that pushed me out into going into a much smaller enterprise, was at my front door with a very small child in his arms. And I saw him before he saw me, and I sat down on my couch, basically just looking at the door, and I waited for him to knock. And then eventually, he did give up, but not before saying, I know you're in there. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, that's not creepy. He said, can't we work out a better wage for you? I realise I may have made a mistake. May have? Stupid man. I was making him a ton of money. Anyway, wrong answer, Steve. These situations become stories of note because it doesn't happen a lot, but this was one of those standout moments where he made me feel like a failure while lumping more and more responsibility on me with no monetary respect. He made the mistake of thinking that, I was just going to keep on working, my butt off and making him a ton of money. And no, I just didn't feel that I was really going to be able to suck that up. Not I, Stevie, baby, not I. But the upside is it made me realise if I can run such a big establishment, I could run a small shop for sure. It made me feel confident from that perspective. I recall it clearly. So it turned into this fantastic opportunity that wouldn't have come to my attention had I not been treated unfairly and had I not been looking further afield. That was the fuel. I, of course, had a lot to learn, but honestly, I was so busy with my business and life as I had fallen pregnant 1 month into owning my very first business. Yeah, I know. Unbelievable, isn't it? But anyway, so it was head down and bum up, as we say here in Australia. One of my favourite takeaways with this particular story is that I don't recall ever being scared. It was more an intoxicating kind of excitement, like, let's bloody do this and give it, my best shot. Point is for you, there is no time like right now. I'm naturally always sizing things up, and on occasion, I still wonder at what I could do next. Well, what else is there out there that I could go for? I can say that I've been fortunate, but I've also given it a red hot go. I give things my all. I give things the opportunity to show me that it is a possibility. And I think even more from an observational point of view, I think others around me, my customers, they like seeing that in action. We never know who we are influencing and who we're inspiring. That unfair situation that by default created an opening that changed my life and helped me to discover that I had a brain for business, and further to that, a discovery of cooking and combining the unusual at that stage in the 1980s. So I contend, Your Honour, that failure is subjective. Boom! Some days in my first year of business, I barely scraped even, and others I made such good money. There were days when I was so exhausted that I used to cry in the kitchen and customers would come in, so I would have to grab an onion, slice it in half and walk out to my shop counter with an onion and my knife in hand and say, oh, onions always make me cry, so no one would know. Then I would get to it. I didn't have one day off in 3 years. I was so committed. I was very young and I was filled with energy and ideas. I would try new recipes I'd thought up and then hope and pray that they would be okay. But what happened in the end was all of them worked. All the ideas work, and I'd kind of made a rod for my back, meaning because I would always have in stock what the customers wanted, I had to make sure that I had always cooked enough. Say, for example, I had 7 different types of burgers, and so if someone, liked one in particular, I couldn't have it that they would come in and not have it, because that's when you start losing customers. So I had 7 different types of burgers and various rissoles, for example, and I also made all my own sauces, tasty numbers like mango, chili, plum, Thai and tomato. So it was a fantastic cleanup after a morning tea or a lunch session, because it was go, go, go. Anywho, all of this could have failed. It could have gone belly up. The stats were against me. Back in the day, there wasn't much room for getting it wrong, and there still isn't much room. So you really have to work for it. And that is correct. For me to tell you I did it standing on my head while whistling Dixie would be rubbish. Based on 2022 data from the National Restaurant Association, the restaurant failure rate is difficult to track nationwide, but the National Restaurant Association estimates a 30% failure rate in the restaurant industry. In other words, 1 in 3 restaurants will not survive their first year. So not too much has changed in those numbers from the 80s. There were reasons, and I looked at why they were. Customer service is a really big one. I'm huge on customer service. That's so obvious that it hurts my head. Australia has a shocking reputation for bad customer service, and I support that. It is not often enough that I find great customer service, and I find it appalling and beyond ridiculous that cafes who rely on customers' loyalty and to not harness the goodwill is foolish. Anywho, onwards and upwards. I remember my customers would say, and I quote, "You could sell shit, Linda, and we would still come. You remember our names and what we were talking about the last time they were in." And it showed me the importance of the little things that are actually so important to us humans. Not brain surgery, just kindness and interest. Fortunately, I didn't have to sell poo sandwiches. I actually had great food, if I don't say so myself. It showed me how failure could easily visit any business if you haven't ticked a few necessary boxes. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. Failures are a part of life. If you don't fail, you don't learn. And if you don't learn, then you'll never change. As a queenager, I'm not afraid to fail because I understand what it is. No successful person has avoided failures along the way. I believe that failure is character building. And if you fall and try again, you are far stronger than the one that never tried at all. The amount that I've learnt from my failures is tantamount to an admission of lifelong broad education. What did I know about keeping books, accounts, and reading the small print on my contract? What did I know about getting a solicitor to go over it to make sure I wasn't signing my life away? What did I know about cooking? And it just goes on. Cleaning, stock taking, customer service, my own marketing and advertising, making sure that I wasn't over ordering so I wasn't losing money and, my loss of stock, my own art on chalkboards, advertising, creating my own menus and art art describing the different burgers, delivering food, creating platters for functions, baking cakes, hiring and the training of staff, paying for council permissions to sell food. The list just goes on. But I learned. I didn't know any of that when I went in. But boy, oh boy, like anything we do, you learn pretty quickly. I think if we knock out the word successful, I believe we are so resourceful as humans and that we can find ways up and over and through. We call it success, but I think it is just being resourceful, resilient and giving things a red hot go. I can live with that. Well, look, I've seemed to have overstayed my welcome a little bit right now at this time. I would just like to thank you as always for popping by. I'm always so happy to see you. It's so great that you do, and I hope that you're well. Please say good day to the family and the dog for me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.